pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, everybody, and thank you for coming on this beautiful night. Couple of important things to do tonight. First up, we have some introductions. David, I'd like to start with you, please.
Hi, I'm David Clark. I represent Westminster on the Union High School Board.
Thank you.
Kelly Ryan, principal.
Rob Welch representing Rockingham.
Jamie Starrell from Westminster.
Mike Stack, Rockingham.
Andy House, superintendent.
Jason Terry, representing Rockingham.
June Strudier, representing Westminster.
Darcy Sprague representing Grafton. Priscilla Lambert representing Rockingham.
And do we have anybody out on Zoom?
I don't see any board members.
I don't see Deb. Okay. We do have a quorum, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have eight of the 10. Okay. First up, adjustments to the agenda. Do we have any? David, did you have any?
I have nothing.
Okay. Communication and public comments. If anyone in the room would like to comment, I'd like you to come up to the table, sign in so I can say thank you with an email. Is anybody out in the public? Any comments? I see none. Anybody out on Zoom land? Okay, great. New old business for discussion action. First up, we have administration's plan / recommendation to open school under option 2 or option 3 with detailed steps. That's you, Kelly. Fire away, please.
Andy, is there anything you want to say?
So I just want the board to know that I just want to thank Ms. O'Ryan and her staff. They have been working tirelessly to put together a plan, and this is it's a moving target for us. And you know, we just found things out yesterday that we didn't know, and just on how materials are coming to us or different pieces. So a lot of it is a lot of reaching out, trying to wait for folks to get back to us. We were talking with people up until about 30-40 minutes ago, trying to get some of this done. So I think they put together the best they can do right now. There's still some, honestly, there's still some things that we don't know yet, and we need to finalize. But I think it's a good plan for opening up, and I'm going to kind of let you take it because I know you've been doing the work on it.
Are you able to share the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now. So just give me 1 second.
I can say before that's loaded, just a couple, I think, important things. One, that, you know, to Andy's point, there's a lot we still don't know, and a lot of that information won't come, right, until the folks come in after they do the initial mitigation work and start doing some of that source investigation work, right? So we don't know what these initial test results are going to show, right, and how that may further inform how we need to operate. We don't know the source yet, the cost or any implications that could come from that. I don't want to gloss over that, but I do want to table that in the interest of centering the conversation about the first 6 weeks and seeing what kind of support or questions folks have, so we can get moving on that if the support is there.
Before, can I just ask, Stacy, I see that you're on. Can you see the slide that says BFUHS, whatever?
I was seeing it and now it just went away.
Tricky.
Yeah.
Sorry, so kicked me.
He heard you.
He did.
He was on. He just kicked me off, Rick. He literally kicked me off as I was doing this. So. Let's see if I can get this back up.
Did you hang up?
No, you didn't hang up. People are still there.
He's got a hot share this.
No, we went. Saratoga. Oh, that would be this weekend. When they go to- We went to a baseball game Sunday and then yesterday we went to the fair, the local fair.
There we go. All right. That was my apology. All right.
Okay. Kelly, fire away again.
Okay, so just to reiterate, this plan that we're gonna walk folks through today is really just geared towards the first 6 to 8 weeks or so of school opening. And that's really benchmarked against the initial mitigation plan we've been provided by the consultants, specifically the deployment of those carbon filtration units, primarily in the C and D wing. I'll talk more about that in a moment. That also includes replacing our filters per their guidance for the PCV mitigation specialists who were on site yesterday, replacing our HVAC filters and other things like that. Again, I'll get into some of the specific mitigation recommendations, but this plan is really pinned to those recommendations and then the retest that they would then implement in an expedited way to kind of gauge how effective those initial measures are. Once we get that done, then we would turn our attention to what comes next, right? So we want to get started, get launched, get open, get safe, get running. Then we'll start talking about what comes next, right? Like if those units aren't effective, we have every reason to believe they will be effective, but we can work on the next 6 weeks developing a potential contingency plan there. But also we have every reason to believe they will be effective, make an actionable difference in the air quality in our primary teaching and office spaces. So then we move to the source investigation and remediation work. So those conversations will come. Just to quickly summarize, again, the 3 options that were provided to us by the DEC, by the Department of Health, by the AOE, really ran along a risk continuum in terms of exposure to PCBs. Those officials were very clear and persistent in noting that we do have the ability to choose. You do have the ability to choose any of these 3 options if they stand behind all 3. I think the key thing that in whatever plan we pick, right, any of those spaces above the immediate action level remain offline and unavailable to us until those drop to a school action level. Those spaces, I feel like they've been pretty clear in noting, like the auditorium and the gym, for example, right, will remain offline until the mitigation work is completed. So I think we're looking at a pretty lengthy timeline there in terms of accessing those spaces. But just to be clear, none of these options will allow us a return to those spaces, okay? Option 1, right, which is the lowest risk, really reduced, significantly restricted our ability to operate as a school and provide SU support to the district. And no one felt it was feasible for us to operate, to maintain operations under option 1. Option 2, I'll get to this in a moment. Also, I think significantly restricted our abilities to operate as a school, but also to provide services to the larger SU. And so where we've landed is a plan that operationalizes option 3 for the building with the goal of the school, right? Because there's 2 different entities operating here. We've got SU offices and then we have the school, that we would work very hard. We're already working very hard to get staff and students who are in the building supporting the school operations to that 26-hour recommendation provided under option 2. So again, we'd open as a building under option 3. We will move our operations wherever we can, right, through the use of tents and other mitigation structures to get us as close as possible to that option 2 recommendation of 26 hours in the building. The last thing I'd note before we change slides is, under option 2 or 3, we're required to have hired a consultant, PCB consultant, and begin that mitigation work within 6 weeks. We have done that. BHP, who again was in the building when the air samples were collected, is already very familiar with the building and our uniqueness as an open concept school. They've already been on site. They were here yesterday. One of the consultants drove up from New Jersey, met with Andy and Jack Cotter, our director of maintenance, and myself, did a walkthrough of the roof and almost the entire building, right? And so was able to kind of put eyes on and provide some additional guidance to us. So we do have a consultant. They're totally on board and jazzed to work with us. We do have a mitigation plan that can be operationalized this weekend. So I'll talk more about that on the next slide. So I just want to talk through some more of the specifics of the conversations and planning that we've been doing, again, in preparation for a building opening of under option 3 with operationalizing the school at option 2. So option 3, again, preserves full-time access to the SU spaces and services that are already in the building. Transportation, for example, dining services, critical, right? Support to the community, student support services, PT, OT, SLP, all of those spaces, right, that are SU supported are currently under both the immediate action level and the school action level. So all of those spaces, per any of the options provided by the state, are fully accessible. They're under that 100 nanogram space, right? So in picking option 3, we preserve their ability to run and support not only students and staff here in the building, but the district at large. I would note that one of our intentions here is to pivot some of those SU offices to trailers on site. So specifically, the transportation office, they are super jazzed and on board with the idea of pivoting to a trailer. That would allow us to reclaim that space again, which is under a school action level for the use of Bob Lockerbie, PE, right? Ryan Studley. So all the PE and gym equipment, preliminary, student meeting space. We're shifting the weight room, right, to some of the shop in that transportation space. It would allow us to recapture, right, what that gym was in part providing in reclaiming that transportation space. So that's one example. We would look to pivot, again, the student support services, PT, OT, SLP, to a trailer on site, and then kind of reclaim that space, which is a fairly large space. I think how we would reclaim that is still a bit TBD, right? To be determined based on some of the preliminary testing results come back, but we have every reason to believe that that space will remain under that school action level. And so we would be able to reclaim that for the school. So again, that's part of the intention of picking option 3. The goal in that opening 6 weeks is supporting students and staff at the school and getting as close to that 26-hour threshold as possible without disrupting the school schedule. So our intent here, assuming we can get the support with tents and trailers and things of that nature, is that we would run a 5-day full-time schedule. So there would be no disruption to learning. There would be no required remote learning, right? I'm going to come back to that piece in a second, but the key part here is no significant disruption to the school day or the operations of the school. We had, as I mentioned, the BHP consultants on site yesterday. They provided some initial recommendations around filter updates to the HVAC unit. They have given some really clear guidance about closing off that auditorium hallway. In their opinion, just in restricting, which we've already done, continuing to restrict access to that hallway. Some of the PCB numbers in the cafeteria and those spaces over there likely would be mitigated just through that measure, keeping that space offline. So that's easy to do. And then we come to the carbon filtration units. So as we noted, I believe last week, right, the department, the DEC has already ordered 80 carbon filtration units. Those are on their way. We expect first shipment at some point this weekend, and we would look to deploy those. I believe in the D wing, we would do that in consultation with VHB. They're gonna tell us where to put them to maximize their impact. Certainly, we're also bound by things like electrical sockets, right? So we're gonna work with them to create that plan, deploy those initial units in the highest levels in the D wing. We expect, we were told this morning, I think it was this morning, maybe it was late last night, that all 80 of those that were originally requested aren't gonna come this weekend. There's a supply chain issue, but the bulk of them should arrive this weekend. They have every reason to believe that the other pieces that we need will arrive by the following weekend. So over the next week, week and a half, we should have all of those filtration units deployed. They do believe, and Andy, I think, can speak to some of the numbers and science around this a bit better, but that we're gonna need more than 80 to bring the D wing and the C wing. So counseling services, special ed, consumer science, kind of this whole hallway out here. We're gonna need more than 80 units to bring D and C to where they wanna see it. So it likely will be that we're gonna need more than 80. So the DEC is primed. We're told by our consultants that we should have a concrete recommendation on how many more units they'll recommend for those two spaces, but they're on it. So just wanted to name that.
Can I jump in real quick?
yeah.
Sorry, just, so everyone, what the recommendation is an air handler that will exchange air every 6 hours per cubic foot. And so, so the idea is like, they were going with the 80 just for the D wing. And when we said, yeah, but we do instruction in this other part, that, there are some options that we can work with a consultant to possibly take those 80 units and spread them out and begin mitigating all the areas, or focus just on the D wing and then as a new shipment, because again, Greg has been extremely responsive. When he left our meeting, he immediately was notifying the state they need more units, order more units right now. But they're not going to begin that second air sample until we get enough units deployed so that we're doing the 6 air changes per hour. So they want to make sure we're at that level because that's their recommendation.
So the test will be a week after, if we get them on 9/2.
So that second shipment, my understanding is the completion of the 80.
Yeah.
Oh.
Rest of the-
So we
Do
potentially
you
could.
replace those to be used, or are they continuous usage, and how long does it last for a usage of them?
I suspect, I don't know the full answer. I suspect they're very similar to the HEPA filters that we have around. You change out the filter,
Yes.
not the whole unit. But that is with the assumption that those are running basically 24/7. And trying to get an understanding, a lot of our spaces, depending on, again, on size, volume and all that stuff, might need multiple units. So an area like this, maybe he was doing the math and I couldn't keep up with him, but might need 3 units, you know, the space of the library. So.
So school will be well underway before we get our second round of testing.
That's kind of where I was prepping it with, that this is an ever changing, because it may not, it may come faster. We just don't know what we, you know, I want to be conservative in the timeline.
So the other things we're putting forward in the recommendation, again, with the goal of getting as many people as possible in the building as close to that 26-hour threshold until this initial mitigation is complete, is the use of tents. So we've done a couple things. One, I've been poring over student schedules. I think I've looked at close to 190 student schedules, literally going line by line, hour by hour, right? And looking at which intervention at what time of day, right, would have the quickest and easiest way to minimize time in the building, right? So for example, our current tech center enrollment at Brattleboro and Springfield, think about 23–24% of our students access tech, right? So that's 2.5 hours out of the building every day, right? And then you add in our tent recommendations to have cafeteria access outside under protected spaces. You add in that 25 minutes a day, carrier time at the end of the day, about 25 minutes, right? So this quickly adds up to be over 3 hours right out of the gate with very little for almost 25% of our students, right? So we've just been going kind of cohort by cohort in the building to assess in kind of buckets like that, right? Like what changes do we need to make to get this group of students, this group of staff down beneath that level? I would say that work is still in process, but we're well underway and are very confident that the model we're proposing will address this need.
And Kelly,
Yeah.
just to emphasize, without disrupting the 5-day
Correct.
build schedule already.
Correct.
So,
The other thing we've done, which has been exceptionally helpful, right, is we've got an initial tent quote. I'll come to that in a minute. But in really trying to figure out what's going to work for staff, right? Rebecca, bless you, put a survey in the field today to teachers to get a sense of who could easily pivot all 3 of their teaching blocks, for example, outside with minimal tech support. We can't be lugging our interactive boards. That's just a setup on all fronts and an expensive one. And so we're surveying teachers about who can pivot, who wants to pivot, right? Outdoors, what would they need to do that? Who could pivot maybe half their block, right? Who's dead set against it, right? We do have some spaces in the building that are not at an actionable level, right? I'm thinking AEP, for example, Julie Torres, right? Our Spanish thing, there was nothing detected over there, right? So there are spaces in the building that we don't have to pivot outside. So some teachers, some spaces do retain that ability to remain full-time and fully operational as they were planning. But as we get that staff input, it's very clear that we're getting closer and closer to that 26-hour threshold. So that plan is being done in consultation with teachers. Yes, June.
Go ahead, Kelly. We'll ask another question.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
You're on a roll, keep going.
Okay. I think the other thing just to name is that we're obviously looking at student schedules. We're obviously looking at teaching schedules and staff support in the building. We're also not losing sight of the co-curricular pieces that we've got planned for the first 6 to 8 weeks of school, right? Homecoming, athletics, pep rally, things like that. We've taken that all into consideration in the specific tent configurations that we've requested. So we're able to pivot and hold those events with some slight modifications. But again, we're looking to minimize disruption. The other thing we're looking at and included in our budget, which we'll come to in just a moment, is, offsite rentals. We are, Connor was out there today looking at a potential spot, right? We're gathering information about availability and cost, looking at the bus transportation, availability of drivers. We're looking at our theater and performing arts programs, our winter carnival, and really trying to source and cost all of those pieces, but to get as much of the year planned out, again, with the knowledge that the gym and the auditorium are really not coming back online this year. And so we're trying to get ahead of that. Could be wrong. Would love to be wrong. I don't see that happening. The other thing, and like PSATs, right? Some of our testing requirements, we've already got space secured at the middle school, things like that. So the last thing I would note is, we have heard from students and families who are not comfortable coming back into the building regardless. And so I think it's important to center that reality in this plan to start. We have had conversations with the TBLC. In our proposed budget, we do hold some monetary support for students and families who are not comfortable coming back in, and they're prepared, BTBLC is prepared to but to provide, right, a full-time online course enrollment for those students who make that request. The other thing that we're looking at that's been, I'll use the word tedious, is school choice. We do retain the right, for our understanding of the policy, to continue to support a handful of additional students and families who may wish to school choice out. At some point, even if we were able to support it, ultimately, it's also up to the, receiving district. That's beyond our control. But that is an option that we are exploring as well, is to figure out how many students we currently have out of district, how many more can we support within the statute? And then if we have seats and we have districts who are prepared to receive, then we would notify families so they could partake in some type of lottery or process that we could finalize in consultation with the AOE. The other thing we're looking at is working with our Brattleboro and potentially Springfield, right? We do again have almost 25% of the building that's already accessing tech programs, right? They're already right next to Springfield High School and Brattleboro High School, right? And so I know our conversations have started with Brattleboro. We're like, could you support students who are already enrolled in your tech programs, right? Or who choose to go on to become enrolled in your tech programs, and also completing some of their additional coursework there in the building, right? So we're looking at the feasibility of that and the cost structure associated with that. Again, that wouldn't be a mandate to families. If we can support it financially and with transportation, that could be an option that's provided. We're further along with the Brattleboro site than we are with Springfield, so I would just note that it's still open. But I do sense I have heard from a handful of families who are specifically curious about that option as well. So I think that's worthwhile of additional consideration. And I would note that folks have been, again, it's been a little tedious at times to get some of the details we need, particularly around finances, but folks have been tremendous in rallying their teams and support from the state level down to area schools. I want to reiterate that. In all of this, I think it's important, that the communication remain really dialed. And I've already talked to Kane O'Connor, who's our point for communications, right? That we would really need to commit to a weekly update. We've already provided a number of pivots in the information that we were provided just yesterday or late last week, right? And so there's a lot of uncertainty out there, a lot of bad information out there. And I think it'd be important that we commit to a timely and transparent communication as part of this plan as well. Slide, yeah, Kelly. Oh, I don't know if I can take her, those go to you.
So let her keep going.
Kelly, are parents aware that Brattleboro also has PCBs at their school? And that Green Mountain does, and a lot of the schools around us also have this?
I don't know what those.
Oh, okay. I thought you told me to
We're
go
gonna wait
ahead.
till she's done
Sorry.
and then we'll ask her question.
Sorry, Jason, I
That's okay.
apologize. I thought you told me to go ahead.
I just want to clarify, to my knowledge, Brattleboro High School does not have PCBs.
It's got a couple rooms that it closed off.
To my knowledge, I do not believe the high school does. I do understand that some of their.
Time
other
out.
but
I'm out. We're concerned about our students here. So Kelly, please
Yeah, but they
go
were
ahead.
talking about them going there.
Go ahead, Kelly.
So the last piece, Sandy, can you switch slide? So again, this is, we're doing our best to put numbers to all of this, right? We have provided a preliminary cost of the pieces we've previewed. So the HVAC filters that VHB recommended, $2,500. I've consulted with Ricky, our IT director, right? Like, what would it take to shore up our wireless access points, right? If we move to tents or trailers, how can we be certain, right, that wireless connectivity will be strong? And so he already has these wireless access points in the building. He's got electricians in the building this week, and he's prepared to pivot some of their focus to get those operational wherever we decide, if we decide to put tents or trailers this week. And so that's the estimated cost for the electric and remaining work that would be required there. Tent rentals, that is an estimate. And I would note that is currently an estimate for an 8-week rental. We may not need all 8 weeks, and we may not need all the tents, right, that we originally requested a quote on. Those tents include walls, they include chairs, tables, propane heaters, propane, right, so we can heat through the fall as far as we can prior to snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, cancel on both boards.
Yep.
The other one.
Yeah, the other, that one. It's sneaky, yeah,
Right.
Around the corner.
thank you. We've heard that we got an update just late this afternoon that we expect, one of the tent providers could be on site tomorrow to kind of walk the perimeter with us and give us a more accurate estimate. But he, at the outset, feels pretty confident that if given the green light, he could start tent setup as Friday this week. And we could get most of these tents, maybe not the sides, certainly not the propane, but at least most of the tent structures up and ready to go for next Wednesday. We're still figuring out, again, honing in on the co-curricular rentals. So I'm looking specifically at basketball and home games, right? And our ability to host those offsite in a larger venue. Looking at our winter carnival, other theater pieces like that. We're still kind of honing in on the exact need, what would work for those team members and the associated costs, but that's our current benchmark, at least for basketball. Again, just hosting the home games, not practices that we would absorb elsewhere in the district. Transportation TBD, depending on what that final need is going to be. As I mentioned earlier, we feel like it's important to center the opportunity for fully remote for students and families who don't feel comfortable coming back into the building. Our estimated cost based on just some of the initial requests we received from families is to tuition for about 10 students at full-time enrollment. Some of those students may choose to just enroll for the fall semester and wait for some of the preliminary mitigation to happen and to see what those results may be. Others have expressed in no uncertain terms, right, that they're not comfortable coming back in the building until the PCB mitigation or remediation has been complete. So there would be some full-time demand I expect as well. That tech at JK enrollment, that's really what we're trying to finalize with Brattleboro and potentially Springfield. Could they take on some of our additional students for some of those courses? What would that cost structure be? Again, that conversation is in progress with Brattleboro at the moment. Expect to have those numbers in the morning. Again, the tech center transportation, adding on additional runs is TBD depending on that demand. And the last piece that we've centered is trailers. As I mentioned earlier, we would look to pivot the transportation and student support services here in the building to those trailers. We estimate the cost to be about $1,000 per unit per month. And would also look to purchase a dedicated trailer for the transportation storage. They've got a lot of goods they need. So that is our ballpark figure at this moment in time. My understanding, Andy, is that once the board picks a model, then we can take that model and this preliminary cost request to the DEC. They would evaluate which of these things, if not all of these things, they would provide the green light for reimbursement for. Is that correct?
Correct, and they would notify the AOE that certain measures were allowable under a mitigation strategy. And so just to be very clear, what I don't know and continue to keep trying to get an answer on is something like the VTVLC.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be considered a mitigation effort? Or would the AOE and the DEC look at the fact that they deployed carbon filters that have reduced, assuming they have reduced the particulates under the school level, so therefore VTVLC would not be a mitigation option under whatever their plan, but it may be something the board chooses to support of students, so it would not be a reimbursable cost. The same thing might be for tech students that we work out a deal with, say, Brattleboro, Springfield, for those students to stay down there. That tuition cost for those students, the state may not see that as a mitigation option or an appropriate one, and so that might again just be a cost that the board is assuming as a non-reimbursable. I just don't have those answers for you, and I apologize for that. I'll just add the conversations I've had with Brattleboro and WRCC, which is the Wyndham Regional Career Center. They already have a cost structure in place for receiving students and having them take classes. They do it with some of their other setting schools. Springfield, we just haven't been able to connect with them yet, so I don't know what their structure is in place. But more of our students go to Springfield than go to Brattleboro. So.
I would note, because I think it's important to center concretely, right, that part of that trailer support would also support staff-specific mitigation. Namely in that we're gonna look to temporarily pivot what was our ISS or in-school suspension space off the cafeteria. Again, one of the 3 or 4 spaces that came in under that school action level as a teacher space, right? So if a teacher is teaching in the D wing and their space is at a school action level, but they've got their planning period, right? They would have the option to go certainly outside to any of the spaces we'd be setting up, or to that ISS space, which is under that school action level. Eventually, if we get support, we'd have that trailer more officially set up outside, again, for staff to access during lunch, planning periods, things like that. So.
Kelly, before I let these sharks question you, I just want to say, thank you for the details of this. Looks very well thought out, and you have, from my standing, you have a plan, and people adjust plans all the time, and it's part of life, right? We always have a plan to do something, but you have to pivot and adjust and be adaptable. So I appreciate the fact that you want to do a 5-day full-time schedule for everybody, and then try to get to 26 hours in the building as much as possible. So my only question for you, and I would like to take a motion, but my only question for you is the dean of students and the vice principal, are they instrumental in any of this stuff? What would they be doing to help you with this? It seems like
All of it.
were they involved with this?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to Mark's involvement in particular. Alyssa has been a lovely sounding board, and she's new and going through new staff orientation too at the moment. So Mark, I've had to kind of pull in for some of his prior counseling duties in particular, and was like, I need you to run these student schedules. I need you to network with WRCC in particular. So everyone, Rebecca walks on water, in case you didn't already know that, right? Like, and many, many other, Jeff Potter, so many people, right? But lots of people have weighed in various ways on the plan.
So, yeah, thank you for nights, weekends, doing everything you can for us. So I think June had her hand up first. So go ahead, June. No, hold on, we're gonna go June, Priscilla, David, and Mike. Is that okay? And then whoever else. That's what I saw.
So at Thursday's meeting, I think you said 76% of your staff were not in favor of full-time. So I'm wondering if you have talked to them about their feelings for coming back to school 5 days a week and trying to limit their time in the building to 26 and the remainder outside.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard from a lot of folks. I think it's, as more responses have come in, either through that survey or those one-on-one meetings or emails, right, texts, getting it on all fronts at the moment. I think I would say 60 to 65% of the staff do have a preference for option 2 to wait and see how the mitigation goes. The rest were pretty clearly in favor of option 3, like, just let's do this. I've been in the building long enough. I trust the science. I trust the mitigation will work. I think we have at least one staff member that I've heard from that might not choose to join us regardless of the option that we pursue. But that, I think, perspective is in the minority. I think folks that were leaning option 2, that I've spoken to at least, are comforted by the tents and the mitigation strategies that we've previewed, that it's not, we're going option 3 and we're not going to take into consideration any needs here. I think folks have said they felt heard and comfortable with the proposal. So again, I have not heard from everybody, but those I have heard from the RFPs.
Yeah, I'm just, with that being said, I'm just a little cautious of voting tonight because we can't have school if your teachers aren't on board. So if we choose option 3, which I believe is you and Andy's recommendation, and the teachers say, no way, then what do we do then? That's what I'm feeling a little cautious about.
So my thought, if I may answer a little bit, so my thoughts on that is, I think no matter what option we end up with, we're never gonna please everybody. The plan that Kelly and her team have put together, while it says option 3 on paper, it's really functioning under an option 2 for our staff, which the majority of the staff have indicated that they're comfortable with. So it's using the guidelines of option 2, but on paper it's an option 3, because some of the concerns that we heard from board members was, okay, if we choose option 2 and then our numbers, we mitigate our numbers down, how fast can we pivot to option 3? So by choosing option 3, we have flexibility to adjust our hours under option 3. And so that's where, like, on Thursday night, we were like, option 2, right? And then as we started looking at it and talking with people and looking at plans, it was, wait a minute, if we went with option 3, we can still function under option 2 for our students and our staff. It allows the SU offices to operate under an option 3 because of where the numbers are. And we can, because there's so many variables, how students are not in the building, they're under the 26 hours or very close. And by having the ability for staff to be outside the building, they get down to an option 2.
And just to be clear, so option 2, 3, their teachers are still working 40 hours. It's just a matter of if they're in a building or not. It's not 26 hours, I'm done for the
Yeah,
week.
It's the
How
same.
many hours
Okay,
there's in the building, yes.
yeah, okay, I just want to make sure that that's concrete. Priscilla,
I am impressed that you have, looked at this and figured that you can get it down as close to. It also says that, you know, we're not under a strict 26. If we went 27 hours, nobody's gonna fault you, but you're really working really hard for that. I do question the tech kids. They're out so much of the time anyway. They're well under the 26, so I really question that additional there. And I also question the VTVLC because we know that VTVLC was not a great option when we did it. It's online and there's that lack of support that you don't get with a in-person teacher. So I'm hoping those parents don't decide they want to go that route, because I don't think it's great for the instruction level for the children. And I realize we're dealing with parents and your concerns. I will say that I know Bob Lockerbie was in this building within the first 5 years of its being built for 4 years. That's when the levels were probably even higher. And he worked in the gym for a lot of the time that he was here. I was in Central School for the first 5 years that it was built. So I had those higher levels at that time. Hopefully they've come way down and we don't deal with this. And 25 years here. So I understand the teachers' concerns. I understand the students' concerns, but I think keeping it in context of it is, they told us 6 in a million increase after 30 years in a building at 11.75 hours a day. So I think I really appreciate the staff and all they're doing to keep that in mind while still addressing the concerns of people. Because the first day when it hit me, it was, oh no, we can't do this, we have to. But I think as you calm down and realize and we see what you guys are doing and how well you're handling it, I think that's what's going to make the difference. Do you know how many tents you're going to be asking for at this point?
We're looking at a number of different configurations, and a lot of that is going to be driven by his visit tomorrow or Thursday. and what the space will allow and permitting and things like that. He feels pretty confident. Everything we've asked for that we anticipate meeting, he feels like he can meet that need. I've walked the grounds with Jeff Potter. But I can't comment on the specifics until he's here on the ground.
And I have faith in the science that hopefully when we test immediately, all the levels will have dropped, and at that point, then we can start moving that into the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to preview again, the plan is really 6 to 8 weeks. The tents are not a long-term solution, right? They're not, we can't, we've gotten clear guidance from the rental company, we can't rely on them through winter. Right, so this is a short term, just to overstate the obvious, this is a short-term plan. So.
Thank you. So anything else, Christine?
That was it. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
David? Well,
Excuse me, addressing the chair. I would like to get a motion, excuse me, out on the floor so that we can discuss it.
thank you.
And specifically with regard to that motion, I would like to hear an administrative recommendation of what you want. And I would like to speak to my motion. So can you state, Kelly or Andy or both of you, what you want in such a form that I can offer it as a motion? And if you're not sure, then maybe I will make my motion, and then it could be open for amendment as the board feels necessary. And my motion will be fairly simple. I move that we give administration, building and central office, what I would refer to as operational authority to get the school open and keep us apprised of developments.
Well, I'm writing that down.
That's my motion.
So,
If I may, it needs an
David.
amendment.
It needs,
hold on a second. Administrative operational authority, and then keep us in the loop.
I moved to give administration operational authority to open the school and keep us apprised of developments.
and option 3.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. Deb?
I believe it needs an amendment, and I'll ask if you would accept this friendly amendment to add at the beginning that I move that the Bellas Falls Union High School Board select option 3 and authorize, as you said, so then the middle is yours, and then the end, and to authorize the superintendent to report this option to the DEC. The
I
immediacy of
accept that
that,
as a friendly amendment. Thank you, Deb.
well, make sure that immediately we get what we need and they get that letter to us.
So I gotta restate the motion. Deb, your friendly amendment, which was
Is to-
accepted.
Okay, yep.
Open under option 3, administration, operational authority to open school, keep us in the loop, or what David said,
And to authorize
and authorize
the superintendent.
superintendent to contact the DEC.
No. He's telling you to check your phone because he sent you a message. I'm not doing this.
All right, point of order. Deb?
Yes, that's essentially correct, yeah.
Okay,
Just make
so we have
sure
a
we have
motion on
that
the floor.
letter. Thank you.
And David, you'd like to speak to that motion, correct?
Can't wait till after the meeting.
Yes, I would. I think it's imperative that instead of asking how many tents we're gonna put on the campus, that we'd simply trusted administration will do what's necessary without being frivolous about it and get school open.
Correct, and that's why we have the second bullet point, which is next. Anyone else like to speak to David's motion?
Vote on
Can
that
I just ask the
first.
first?
I have
Two questions.
So well, we can open that up to questions. Ron, did you have a question for David? Jamie, go ahead.
Yes, I have one question. Andy made a comment about DEC maybe supporting, not supporting some of these things, and that just brought up one question I have is whether or not the options that we choose change the funding support we might get from DEC. Because if we say that we're in the building for 26 hours or less, do we get more of some of those things? Because we've said we're only going to be in the building for 26 hours or less. So therefore, they might support more funding for mitigation.
So my understanding from AOE, because that's the funding source,
AOE funding for that.
is they, any recommendation from DEC will be 100% reimbursable. That's how they've left it. So, we emphasized, to, VHB that we felt all of these were part of our mitigation plan and needed them to support that, which I believe they will. I will commit that
Priscilla, Andy's talking.
if the AOE comes back and says, we won't support the virtual learning, we'll let you know immediately. I mean, that type of stuff, but, I think that it's, many of these numbers are also on the very high end, because the way DEC says is, we authorize this not to exceed, right? So if we go with like the real conservative number and it goes over, then we're kind of stuck in that sense. But, again, I may get an answer tomorrow. I just, you're trying to get them and couldn't get it, so.
Thank you, Jamie. Mike, you had a question, then we'll go to Rob.
Yeah, and I echo everybody's sentiment in terms of Kelly's doing a wicked good job and working really hard to deal with the hand that she's been dealt. But my question is, what's your plan B if the remediation doesn't result in what you're looking for? And in that plan B, have you looked at other spaces within our existing footprint, the middle school, the Grafton school? Many of these schools are half capacity or thereabouts. Have you considered that? And bottom line is, what is the plan B?
I would say considered only at a conceptual level, because this has been a 24/7 lift.
Oh,
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yes.
that.
I do completely understand that once we get this initial opening operational, that we're gonna need to start putting just as much time and energy into that kind of fork in the road decision. Which I think, to be clear, comes not just with those initial mitigation results, but also is gonna come again when we get those source investigation results, right? So there's gonna be multiple decision points that we're gonna be needing to continuously prepare for.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
One other question. Any feedback that you've got from the students or guidance from the standpoint of, what's the psychological impact going to be on the students? And I don't know if you've gotten much feedback from students. We only had one at the meeting the other day. I mean, we can all sit here and debate what the long-term risks are, 6 in a million. But the bottom line is, what's the psychological impact you believe, which could be reflected in absenteeism, which is already a problem, of bringing the kids back into the school before we have this information?
I don't know, because I haven't heard from a lot of folks. I think the folks I've heard from have been pretty clear and keep it as normal and as safe as possible. So, that minimizing disruption to athletics, minimizing, no one is interested in going back to COVID, right? And fully remote 24/7 and loss of connection, that seems to be the primary theme in the feedback I have received across the board, but particularly from the few students I've heard from.
One other, I think, key things to monitor is the absenteeism
Yep.
rate. And if that's going in the wrong direction, you're getting a signal from the parents, the
Yep.
students, the staff, that this is not working for us. So I think that should also be a piece of data that's fed out quite
Yep.
frequently.
We would monitor that. We already have systems in place through our CARES team, where we're looking at attendance data in particular. And with a lot of key stakeholders who are in this space, their administration, our home to school liaison, right, dean students, school counseling, our counselors, right? So we're kind of having multiple eyes on those data points. We were already gonna pivot to a twice a week meeting from a once a week meeting, at least for the first 6 weeks of each semester anyways. So I would say our systems are already well kind of primed to respond and deploy resources to include if a student and our families telling us like maybe they feel comfortable to start, but that changes, right? We're gonna continue to develop those menu of additional supports through BTBLC, so we'll continue to refine that and be vigilant. Yeah.
Thank you. Rob?
Mike asked my first question, so I put my hand down. Thank you.
June?
Does anybody know if the Springfield or Brattleboro school / tech centers have been tested yet?
Riverville
For
Tech
PCB?
Centers is PCB free, was built after PCB.
River Valley, so we don't know about the high school yet.
Springfield.
Excuse me, Brattleboro's Tech Center also is a modern building. It's newer than RVTC is, Jim.
So those are techs,
Tech.
but the
Those are-
schools, we're not sure if they've been tested yet,
No,
because that was one of the options.
Brattleboro High School was renovated nineties, sometime in the nineties. The whole high school went through renovation, but.
And,
I was just gonna
No,
say,
go
to
ahead.
speak to that, like I know at WRCC, am I getting out? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Great. A lot of acronyms. Their ability to provide some of those courses are within the tech center.
oh, okay.
So they
okay.
have a math and I think English or ELA teacher in the tech center who would be able to provide some of those courses that our students need. So
Okay, and my other question is, we're operating under the assumption that the middle school, Central Elementary, Rockingham, Saxon River schools, when they get tested, are gonna be negative. They're gonna fall below, which I'm kind of suspicious of, because they have to fall under the 60 nanograms because of the younger students. So with us pivoting to the middle, and I know the middle school just went under renovation, an extensive one, but wasn't Twin Valley or one of the schools were under a renovation and ended up spreading their PCBs more into the building. So I want to caution us towards, because the middle school was built back in the 1800s.
So I think that's
That's a plus.
that would not be tested, I believe, right?
So, no,
Pre-PCB.
so I can speak to that a little bit. So, Central Elementary is, slated to be tested, later this fall, as is the middle school. The middle school was originally built in the 30s, and PCBs were used from 1930 to 1979. So it has gone through an extensive renovation. The consultant has, signaled or indicated, that that's a positive, that the building has been through renovation. I think that if we were at a point where we were having a discussion about having our students go to the middle school, let's just use that as an example. Number one, we would be at a point where they're in the potential of being tested or whatnot. But also, and that's a discussion we would have to have with the Rockingham School District. I mean, there's a lot of variables there. And, again, as Kelly said, I thought quite elegant, conceptually, yes, we've had these conversations, but I mean, I think we need more information.
Yeah, I
before we
just
can do
wanted
it.
to
So,
caution, because we could be sending them to ground zero when we're better off than they are.
Well, to play that out just a little bit, yes, they may be under a lower threshold because, again, it's 7th grade through 12th
Adult.
grade is the 100. And so theoretically, if I'm just playing this out and I'd be totally riffing here, if they were in that 100, 100 to 200, right around that above school action level, but below the 300, the high school students could, I mean, it's the same situation we're in currently. We would have to pivot out the lower grades out of there. So it could be just because the numbers are low for the low kids, it may be acceptable for high school kids.
So
But
the
that's-
action level is the same, it can't be the same 300 as if it was the nanograms were 100 for the older kids,
I believe 300 is the immediate response.
even for the younger kids.
Deb, you had a question. Do you want to call the
I
question?
want to call the question.
Thank you, Deb. Can you restate the motion for us? You too? So I did.
Yeah, you did write it
The
down.
motion on the table
Yeah.
is we're picking option 3 and giving administrative operational authority to open school to keep, and to also keep us in the loop,
And to authorize the
and authorize
superintendent.
superintendent to call the DEC.
Right. That's the
David,
motion.
how would you like to vote?
I vote yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Mike?
No,
Jim?
Abstain.
Darcy?
Yes.
Priscilla?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So I have 6 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstain. Motion passes. Congratulations, Kelly. Next up, we have authorized administration to take all necessary steps under mitigation, remediation concerning all of Bellas Falls Union High School building and co-curricular activities. So, go ahead, Jim.
I would like to make that motion as previously read.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to authorize administration to take all necessary steps under mitigation, remediation concerning all of Bellas Falls Junior High School building and co-curricular activities. There's a motion on the floor. I would like to speak to it before, so Andy, this is, I added this and this is, I want to take this seriously, and I know you're going to, but my point is that like soon as this meeting's over, we're calling DEC, we're calling Steve Horton, you know, we're doing whatever we need to do, funding, we'll worry about balancing the books at a later time, which we have a budget meeting tomorrow. I want to worry about opening the school safely and getting things accomplished and testing, mitigation, and whatever the source is, fix it immediately. So there is 24 hours in a day. The school closes at 3:30. My expectation would be Steve Horton has a crew in here on the overnight, fixing whatever. Weekends, it's a 24-hour thing. And that's how, I know that's not gonna happen, but that's how seriously I think this is to fix it. And that's the charge we're charging you guys with, to fix it as soon as possible, so that we can get back to it. We have a motion on the floor. Brad, June, you have a question?
Yeah, also, in speaking, with a specialist today, he said that we can do the testing now. Is there any, do you have any, because the testing is going to need to be done regardless of whether the carbon filters bring down the air quality level. There's still PCBs in the building, so they're going to need to be sought out what's causing them, and it's going to need to be taken care of. So it's my understanding that Glenn can order the kits to do this testing now, yesterday. So do you know, in speaking with Glenn, if he's going to do that before the second air quality test? Because we might not be doing that till the,
So I'm assuming Glenn is Greg, is what you mean.
oh, Greg, okay.
So I don't know who your specialist is. I have to follow the Agency of Education and Department of Health and the Department of Environmental Conservation. They have told us that we have to hire a consultant and follow their plan. So that is the plan we are following. We are moving as fast as possible. Where we had heard 48 hours, and then we could test again, you know, right away at 48 hours after they were deployed. And then we also heard the Department of Health say, we really recommend a week.
Right.
So we're trying to follow the science and what is appropriate. Everyone has told us that testing right now, you're probably gonna get the same numbers. What they told us, and I think it got a little lost in that community meeting, was the original sample that the lab had forgotten to mislabel. That original sample, the numbers were almost the exact same as the numbers from the second sample. They just weren't labeled correctly, which made those three agencies feel and believe that that second test was valid and there was not a need for a third test.
I'm not talking about the air
Right.
quality test. I'm talking about, he must have some idea walking around the building
So,
where they might be coming from.
so he does, and that's the point, is that you begin with the mitigation because you reduce down and dilute the air. And then that will help you understand, is it something that the air handlers are pumping around? Or do we have to go around and start testing every little area? Then they start to zero in on, you know, obviously the gymnasium, the levels are high. He has some areas that he believes are those pieces. But if he ends up with this area goes completely underneath, he's not gonna test this area.
So his recommendation is to wait for the second air quality test to figure out what's
Where to zero in.
driving the
Yes.
PCBs.
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the floor. So let's take a vote. David?
Yes,
Oh, wait, it's still,
I'm
Nope,
not
go ahead.
sure what we're voting on. You said authorized
it's number 2, yeah.
concerning building and co-curricular activity. What you telling us is we're voting to get the mitigation going, the cleanup going? Is that what you're?
I'm telling
gonna
you,
speak for?
I would like to give administration authority to do whatever it takes to get the building repaired and fixed and rid of PCBs
Okay,
as quickly as possible.
I'm not getting that from that motion. That's why I'm asking. Okay.
I have a question first before we vote on it. I hesitate on saying, let's go with remediation. I think there is more to think about in terms of remediation. I'm not ready to just like hit the gas pedal on that. There's just so much more information to find out and what it means for this school to just say, let's fix it all. Because I think there are some other issues with the school. So if you're gonna fix some things, there might be some other things to consider in those moments. So I'm all for mitigation and doing that, and then looking at the information and making the best decisions when it comes to.
So like for an
remediation.
example, let's say, the guy comes in, tests it, and they say, hey, it's the caulk in the gym. So I think that is an easy, we don't need to,
Sure.
hold Andy's hand
Mhm.
on that. I
Yeah.
think that Andy and Kelly, are definitely smart enough to be like, hey, that might cost $10 million. We might, need to get some advice on that.
I don't know, you have $10 million?
Yeah, it's right there, kind of
So,
right there.
so that's,
Yeah.
I think we need to make sure that we are giving them the authority to move forward, mitigate, repair as needed, and get the kids back into school full time. Because at the end of the day, we might end up paying for all that stuff. We might. You never know. That's my opinion. You already asked a question. Deb?
So I, and yeah, I understand the confusion about some of this is the difference between where we're putting kids and what we're doing, what the building the kids are in. I mean, that's kind of what you're getting. There's a two-parter here on this the motion that's on the floor. And of course, it's a lot more to just removing caulk than just taking it out. Unless you want to increase the level of PCBs, you can't do it. You have to abate it like you abate asbestos. So it takes a lot more money to get that done because the experts have to do it. And they're not just going to go do it anyway. They're going to use the experts available from the DEC in order to get it done appropriately. So that's why we can't go ahead and do our HVAC system because we're just going to make it worse. So that's it.
So to speak to that, if, let's say they come back and they say, hey, there's no PCBs in the HVAC system, and we already know we have one or two of those systems in that wing that are not working, I think we ought to just get them working.
When we find that out, yeah.
Yeah, when we find it out. That's why I said it like that. Let's
Yeah.
find out what the issue is, and then let's go attack
Yeah,
it.
of course.
And that's, as a parent, I want our Bellows Falls kids, I have kids playing basketball, but I have to be consistent. So during COVID, if I'm jumping up and down saying, don't put masks on kids while they're playing basketball, it makes no sense. I need to be consistent and say, I want to get the gym open as quickly as possible for all of our kids. And the co-curricular, the auditorium, the choir, the band, it's all the same to me. Athletics is all of that is athletics. to me. You have to be athletic to play an instrument, in my opinion. So that's, I want to give these guys the authority to do what they're supposed to do and not micromanage them, because that's what we've been accused of. And that's what we're going to make sure that we're communicating, and we're gonna hold them accountable to get back to us the information that they're supposed to and hold their feet to the fire. And that's what it's all about, right? That's just my opinion. Well,
Well, they have to bring back anything that is a certain cost because we have to approve costs over a certain area
Right.
anyway.
Right.
But to get started, I think it is important that they start mitigating. I do think, for example, the gym, it may be the rubber mats under the floor that weren't removed when they put down the new floor. It could be the ceiling, it could be any number of different
Right.
things. They can make that determination, and if it's a large thing, I would hope that it was coming back to the board for discussion and
I'm sure he
Yeah.
has a limit. I don't remember what the limit is, but I know we passed it a while ago.
40,000.
40,000.
I called the question.
Thanks, Robert.
Yay.
David, how do you vote?
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Darcy?
Yes.
Priscilla,
yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Congratulations. All right, next up, administration will promptly share all communications from state agencies with the chair. And,
I speak that I asked for that motion, but I have the sense that there is now a common understanding between this board and administration. So I think that that motion is redundant, and I do not intend to make it.
would anybody else like to make that motion?
I would, because
Go ahead. Make the motion.
I make the motion, that administration will promptly share all communications for the state agencies with the chair, only because stuff changes daily. They learned stuff today that they didn't know last Thursday or Friday. So if we are tasked with representing our community is asking us questions. And we need to be up to date on the current information we're being provided.
But then you want it with for the chair to share with us as well then, because otherwise we will have no.
Right, we could make a special meeting dependent. We would have to leave that up to the chair.
and the
I will,
chair-
just as long as you don't
chair
reply
shares it
all.
with us. If it's just informational, he
It's
can
okay.
share it in a meeting, without a meeting. If it's needing for a decision or something, or some discussion, then it has to be a meeting.
Rob, you had your hand up? All right, we have a motion on the floor. David, how do you vote?
I am going to abstain.
I'm gonna write this down.
Will you repeat the
Rob?
motion, please?
The motion on the floor is administration will promptly share all communications from state agencies with the chair.
And I added and with, to the board. For you and from you to the board,
Oh, the chair will share with the board.
and the chair.
So are
will
you
share
making a friendly amendment?
Please.
So your friendly amendment, if June accepts, is that I will share with the board.
I accept.
Okay, and I will share with the board. No problem with that. Rob,
No.
let me go back. Dave, do you still abstain? Because there's a friendly amendment.
I respect the friendly amendment. And I think I will continue to abstain. I might explain that under director's comments.
Thank you, David. Jamie,
Abstain.
Mike,
Yes.
June,
Yes.
Darcy,
Yes,
Priscilla,
yes.
Yes.
which I could get a vote. All right, so that passes with a 1, 2, 3, 5 yes, 2 abstain, 1 no. All right, we're on to director's comments. Deb, we're gonna go this way.
I'm not gonna say move on because they come back to me.
But I'll make them by accident. Sorry.
I am extremely grateful for all the work that all of you have done to get us to this point. So we could easily say option 3 and give us the flexibility to move without having to get the permission of DEC, which makes perfect sense. Also, I was concerned after our last meeting that we were going to wind up with COVID miniseries as what happens here again because of the scare, and it is a scare. People have to take time to reasonably understand that PCBs are in everything. I was just talking to Jason today. Remember about 10 years ago when they said, don't buy milk in a plastic carton that's got exposure to light? That's PCBs. It's the same thing. It's just all around us. Everything is plastic. So people are becoming more level-headed and understanding that we're working hard to mitigate and remediate everything as quickly as possible. And the administration understands that and the board understands that and appreciate all the work. That's it. Thank you.
Priscilla.
Thank you so much for all your hard work. It shows such a dedication to our students and a care for their being educated and being able to become really the kind of citizens that we want them to be. So thank you so much. And good luck with all of it. And if any of us, I'm sure, can do anything, we're all willing to help out.
Darcy.
Thank you, Kelly, Andy, for all your work, and let us know what we can do to help you.
June.
I want to also thank you guys. Way to step up because you just started the job, Kelly. It's July 1st and you went right directly into a fire. So I want to thank you. I do want to clarify a previous comment. The immediate action levels for kindergarten through 6th grade is 180, not 300. And it's 90 for pre-kindergarten. So I just wanted to clarify that because I think that's important. I am looking forward to as close to normal school year for staff and students as we can. And I'm hoping that the board will do whatever it takes to assist in any way we can. Thank you.
Mike.
Yeah, this may be a little bit off topic, but this whole experience is really, I've only been doing this for all of a year now, but this whole experience in terms of the way the state has dropped this data on us weeks before the opening of school. You know, if you were a skeptic, you say, well, maybe that was intentional, not to give us really an option. So I'm not going to go there, but bottom line is, you know, I've been studying as a new board member a lot of things, the way the state funds education, the outcomes, and two things come to mind at this point. Number one is neglect, and I think this school and the way that the building has been neglected is just symptomatic of what's gone on in the state. The state has decided for the past 16 years that they were not going to put any money into new construction, and that's been studied, and maybe they're about to do something finally. But I think the neglect, whether it's our schools or our buses in the state, are symptomatic of really bad leadership. And I want to call that out because I want the taxpayers and the voters to know what we're dealing with here as a board, as an administration. And the other word that comes to mind is mismanagement. And when I look at the financials of the money that's been spent and is spent in the state, the AOE is spending up to about $2 billion a year now. And they're not taking care of the basics. They're not taking care of the buildings. They're not taking care of the fundamentals that we, I think, as taxpayers and voters really expect. And that's the safety of our students and our teachers. It's not just about the students, our staff and our teachers. And, you know, over the past 10 years, the spending in the state has gone up at a rate that's in excess of inflation. The number of students that's come down, the results have declined. So that's why I'm saying mismanagement. And I think, you know, I'm not pointing fingers because everybody's got responsibility for this. It's not just the schools, the teachers union. The bottom line is the voters and the board members. And I think that we have to start calling out what we see in terms of mismanagement and honestly neglect. And push back on the state. And we can't just do that as a board. I'm speaking to the audience here and saying that, you know, I'd like to get more people, parents that don't want to send their children back into the school, to step up and say to the state, you know, what have you been doing? Where's that money been going? In our case, and if Jason will allow it at some point in time, I'm happy to share the research that I've done on our financials. And our financials, our budget has gone in the direction of salaries and benefits, which are now at 70% of our operating cost. That neglects all the other things like the building and what should have been done in this building over the last period of time. And the bottom line, there is no other industry out there that spends that much money on salary and benefits other than Wall Street. So shame on the people that have allowed that to happen. And I, as a board member, look forward to doing something about it. I hope I'm supported by taxpayers and other people on the board. So that's my comments.
Yes, sir. All said. Jamie?
I want to thank Kelly and Andy as well. That was a lot of work, and I think it was really great to hear that plan. And I think the community will appreciate hearing that. And I think us rallying together and supporting that, I think is going to feel good to the community too, to see us all working together for the common goal of our students. So I think that's really great. I agree. I was pretty shocked to learn that Vermont is the only state in New England that doesn't match some percentage of funds to new construction. That was pretty disappointing to read recently, as all this was shaking out and continues to shake out. The last piece I just want to say is, I would just love to see this plan really communicated. You know, we had one student show up that was one student who showed up at the meeting we had the other night that said, you know, I didn't know about this. I feel like my peers don't know about this. So I'd love for this plan to not just come across as, okay, we're doing option 3 full-time in the building, let's move forward, but really communicate the intention of limiting time in the building. I think it's important that people know that we support that and we support people being in this building as little as they want to be to sort of be comfortable and how they make that work with the schedules that they have. So I would just love to see that communication piece get out there. But good work, everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Rob?
Yeah, I'd like to echo everyone's comments about Kelly and Andy. Also Jamie in terms of the students. And I wonder if some sort of communication can go to our students, because sometimes they don't necessarily get it from their parents, or there may be a disconnect on that. So that was one of the things I wanted to just bring up. I'm sure you guys will all look at that. The other thing is, I would just want to caution all of us as we talk about PCVs of other schools that might be going through it. I worry about us throwing out names that might or might not be accurate. And I just want to, we may read it in the newspaper, we may hear it from somebody. I would just love for us to talk about our district, and then maybe in an executive session, compare things or do things like that if we need to. So that's one of the things I want to mention. And then 5:30 was a really good time for us to meet. I would love to maybe at the next meeting talk about a 5:30 or 6 o'clock meeting and have our superintendent and our principal weigh in on that. So,
Well said, Rob. Thank you. David?
Yeah, Kelly, would you send those down? When the SU met Wednesday night, we were the recipients of what I would describe as a wonderful dog and pony show from Attorney Pietro Lynn.
David, you're gonna have to speak up for the audience.
I want to speak to people who had the opportunity to attend Wednesday's WNESU meeting in which Pietro Lynn was a speaker. And like all good lawyers, he said much, well, talked little and said much, I think is the expression. But if you were paying attention, at 1 hour and 35 minutes into his performance, he gave us a tremendously consequential piece of information, which was this. Under the terms of our engagement letter, to engage Pietro Lynn to sue Monsanto on our behalf, there's a little zinger there. And that little zinger says that, we are required, to give Monsanto through Pietro Lynn 2 weeks advance notice before we begin any mitigation or remediation efforts. And if you think I got it wrong, go look at the tape. 1 hour, 35 minutes. He states it just as plainly as I'm stating it now, maybe more plainly, if you listen carefully. And Thursday night, I offered a motion that we engage outside counsel to advise us on matters involving PCBs. It was tabled when we came back out to discuss it, and I did not oppose the table. I simply abstained from it. And one of the strong arguments given for that table was because we simply did not have enough information to evaluate whether it might be a good idea or a bad idea to engage counsel to advise us about PCBs exclusively. Well, I was fortunate enough to be able to gather some opinion on that. And you have now copy of a document, which I think hits the highlights. You read carefully, you'll know it was written by an attorney who has some experience of these things. And I'm hopeful that between tonight and maybe when we meet again on Monday, we might possibly be in a position to make an informed judgment as to whether this school would do well to, in fact, engage outside counsel to advise us in matters regarding PCBs. And I just wanted to say what everyone else has said so far tonight, and it's a great job, administration.
Thank you, David. We have Cheryl in the audience. Cheryl, would you like to say anything tonight? No, okay, thank you. I want to thank Kelly for all the hard work she's done along with her staff. I know what it takes to do something like this, and this is not a come in at 8, leave at 3 type of thing. So it's nights, weekends, you hit the ground in a full sprint since you started, even before you started. So, thank you for that. And I want to go back to what Mike said, and we do have a budget meeting tomorrow, and we're starting our budget in August versus November. So we're laying the groundwork of what the expectation is financially for our stakeholders and taxpayers and all of the above. I am skeptical of getting any help from anybody. And I'm of the opinion, and how I try to live my life and raise my children is, no one's coming to save you, save yourself. And that means a lot. So at the end of the day, we might have to pay for all of this. So option 2, option 3, tents, whatever. And I'm prepared to do that. And then going back to what Mike said, there is a cost to that. And we are going to need to take a hard look at that stuff when that comes. Would I love to get reimbursement? Yeah, but hope is a scary word, right? So and I'm encouraged, and I'm thankful, and I'm looking forward to opening the school year, and we're behind you 100%. And if you need anything, please let us know. And I hope that, between you and Andy, you're already, going to talk to Steve Horton or whoever, once we know what we're going to do, that, I'm very serious about, there's 24 hours in a day. This is a very serious problem. It's not, we can't hear from contractors, well, it's 6 months. Well, I can't do this. I can't work this. If that is the case, go get another contractor. And do whatever we have to do. You know what I mean? I think everyone on this board is willing to come down and pitch in if we had to. But that would be overstepping our micromanaging stuff, but I'm just saying. We're all willing to roll up our sleeves and the whole community is as well, so whatever it takes. And thank you all.
The budget meeting tomorrow?
Oh, next meeting, actually, we have a budget meeting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. It is open to the public, if you'd like to come, and all board members. On the budget committee is myself, David, and Mike. And then our next scheduled board meeting is next Monday at 6:30, which we're continuing our listening sessions. And Mike, can you tell us who's coming next Monday again?
Yes, we have the newest head of the Compass School coming in, Kendra, and David, her last name is how pronounced?
Kendra Rickerby.
And she is a veteran of flexible pathways, which obviously is a critical skill in these days, where we're trying to manage the number of hours of our students down in the building. So flexible pathways is a program that's been in place since 2013 with different levels of application across different schools. Coming from the independent school world, we felt that she'd be an interesting set of inputs to us and our school also. So looking forward to hearing from Kendra.
Thank you, Mike, and I'm gonna call this meeting adjourned at 7:01 PM.
Yes.
Somebody.
It's not gonna be late, Kelly.
Thank you.